Hi, and welcome back to RC Model Reviews. We're on a roll with video cameras at the moment, and this is the HoryzonHD V4. This was sent to me, I think, by Foxtech, and the reason I'm showing you this is because they sent it a while ago and I hadn't got around to reviewing it, but it's actually quite interesting. It has a number of features in common with the Legend 1 that I posted a video about yesterday. One of the key things it has going for it is, let's get all the stuff out of the box first, is that it enables you to turn the camera off and on from your RC system. A lot of people asked, you didn't mention that with the the Foxeer Legend 1. That's because I haven't tried that yet, but apparently it does have the ability to turn the video recording and still photo taking off and on via your radio system, which, you know, on the face of it sounds like a pretty cool idea. Now, the HoryzonHD4 does the same thing. It'll let you start and stop recording and take still photos controlled from your transmitter on the ground. Now, I've reviewed the previous incarnations of this Horizon HD camera, and I found that, you know, it performs pretty well. The first one had some color tints. The second one performed a whole lot better. The review videos are on this channel. You can find them if you go looking, or if I remember, I'll include a link to them in the description of the video. But they did have some problems with UHF issues because the camera itself is on a long lead, or on a lead. It was on a bit of ribbon cable. It connects to the actual recording unit via a cable, and that cable initially caused a lot of UHF noise. Now here we've got the version 4 and HoryzonHD 4, and this is the recording unit. It's quite small, slimline, pretty light, but it has a plug-in video screen, which means you can actually do your alignment of your camera pretty damn well using the screen, then unplug this, take it away. Now, other versions of the Horizon camera had the video screen built into the recording unit, which made it a bit heavier. You could take the heat shrink off and remove it, but it was still a bit kludgy. Now, they've really polished the product with this one. And so I'll take a quick look at it and we'll see what we can do. I'll add it to the list of video cameras that I'm going to be reviewing when I line them all up and compare them side by side. But one thing that I immediately noticed missing from the stuff you get in the box is this camera, it obviously designed to have a bracket to mount it so you can swivel it, but there's no bracket. They don't give you a bracket. So mounting this camera turns out to be a real pain in the backside. How do you mount it? There's no, I mean, you can't even put Velcro on it because you want it to sit up, not lay flat. So, and I suspect, although I'll find out eventually, I suppose, that this cable comes out the bottom and not the top. If it came out the top, it would be a lot easier, but if it comes out the bottom, then when you take into account the radius you're going to have on there, that means this camera has to sit pretty proud of the airframe if the cable isn't going to be really badly kinked. So those are things that I will look at. Now, obviously it comes with a connector for JST for power, and I'll look in the book. It has a manual, printed manual. I'll look through the book and we'll fire it up and do some tests, obviously. Ooh, a lot of Chinese in this one. We'll do some tests as to the UHF output, because that's always going to be an issue, but I'm not that confident because it has a little thing in here that says, attention to all UHF users, range check must be done before takeoff. And it suggests that you have 15 to 20 centimeters of distance between the UHF receiver and any of this kit. So yeah, it's probably going to be a bit noisy. This cable may be screened, I don't know. We'll check it out, we'll find out. But I'd have to say that if you really do want, this is going to give you, actually it's not even going to give you the lowest profile, because if we compare that to the Foxeer, it is actually taller than the Foxeer, than the Legend 1 and a Mobius, and it's about the same width. So it's still going to be a high drag solution, isn't it, if you've got that facing into the wind? And having this, being able to stow this somewhere else might help if you're a bit pushed for getting your centre of gravity right, but feeling it, that alone feels a little bit like the weight of a Mobius. Let's get the scales out and find out. So here we are, here are the scales. Let's first of all try just the camera unit with cable. Wow, that's heavier than a Mobius. That's like, what is it? It's saying 50 grams, 49 to 50 grams. That's heavier than a Mobius on its own, just the camera and cable. Let's add the recording unit. That's another 45 to 44 grams. So we're getting up there, and of course you're gonna need probably some other cabling, your power cabling. So let's see what we're going to have for an all-up weight. And this doesn't even include a bracket. And if you want to connect it up to your RC system, there's this cable as well. Well, this is a pretty porky solution, 116 grams of weight. And it doesn't, I don't think it does 60 frames a second. I think it's still a 30 frames per second video solution. So yep, there's a price to pay for this flexibility. And of course, you wouldn't normally carry the LCD screen along, but just in case you're interested, the weight of the LCD screen on its own is 30 grams, 31 grams. So there you go. That's the Horizon 4 HD. So let's fire it up and see how well it or how much noise it makes on UHF. Time to get out the spectrum analyzer again. Okay, so there's our background noise on the UHF, and I'm going to plug this in now, and it will automatically start up. Here we go. So, ka-ching! Yep, there we go. It's pretty much on a par with the other systems that we've tested. It's about a 10 decibel noise increase. Just unplug it so we can check, because at the moment we are about minus 98, and it should drop down to about minus 108. Yep, there we go. So it's pretty much on a par. It's interesting, despite having that long cable, obviously it's not radiating too much. So yeah, use it with you, same as the Mobius, same as the Legend 1, about the same as the Xiaomi. So yeah, it's quite acceptable. If you're getting good range with those other cameras, you'd get reasonable range with this. Now some people have asked, what about GPS frequency? So let's crank the frequency up a bit on this thing and see if it's going to affect GPS. Let's go to about 1.2 gigahertz, and let's increase the span we're looking at here. Let's go across to, look, 500 megahertz each side. So this will give us a pretty good indication if there's anything anywhere within cooey of the GPS channels. Here we go. No, really not. There's a little spike come up down here, which I think will go away if I unplug it again. Yep, so there is a spike there. Let's just see what frequency that spike is on. Wait for it to come back. Oh, hang on. It's not going now. What's happened? I unplugged it, plugged it in, and it stopped. Perhaps I plugged it in and unplugged it too quickly. No. It's stopped going. Camera itself has stopped working. Goodness me, that's doesn't happen often in a review, but there we go. The light's not on. It is not working. The buttons do nothing. I think I've killed it. Oh dear. Yes. Hang on a minute. I'll just have a close look. One moment, please. Well, bad news. It's dead. It ran for the total of whatever time you saw it. That's the first time I've ever plugged it in. It ran that long, and now it's just dead. It doesn't go at all. The little LED on here doesn't light up. It's like there's no power getting through. So what can I say? Yeah. So much for that, but hard to recommend a product that dies on the bench in the first 2 minutes of operation. But then mind you, there's always a dud. Doesn't matter what you buy, there's always a chance of getting a dud. And as we all know, if there's a dud, I'll get it. But I may pull it down, see if it's something simple, and maybe we'll have a look inside. That might be the best thing to do at this point. Let's not just throw it away, let's take it apart. Okay, the top is held on with 4 simple screws, or I should say the back of the case is held on with 4 screws, and that's interesting, copper flash. Brilliant, excellent. Look, copper flash, that's wonderful. That's one of the reasons that this doesn't spew out so much RF as it might do, as it might have previously done in the earlier versions. Good idea. All HD recording cameras for FPV use should have this copper flash in them. You'll see how quiet it makes the run cam work when you have it installed properly now. Here's the inside. We've got looks fairly reasonable construction board. These screws are a bit, how you doing, a bit of an angle on those ones. And I'm just going to try something. Wouldn't be the first time that I had pulled something apart and suddenly it works, especially if you've got an intermittent fault. So I'm going to plug this in again and just see if the light comes on. And look, it does. As I say, this is not the first time I've had situations like this. Doesn't seem to be shock sensitive. Why didn't it go before? It's going now, but it didn't go before. Actually, what I'll do is, one thing that has changed, I'll unplug it again, is I'll plug the camera back in. If there's a problem with the camera, it could be dragging down the voltage on the... My God, it's still going. What's going on here? It's got a battery in it. I don't know, does it have a battery? That LED took an awfully long time to go out. I didn't see any mention of a battery. I assumed that this would be just externally powered. I might get the book out and have another read here. This is, yeah, does it have a battery and a charging function? Doesn't mention anything about charging. Maybe it's just got a large capacitor in there, which is a really good thing. There's no mention about batteries, so let's just plug the camera back in, like so. And let's see if when I plug the power in this time, it will start up again. So, you're learning as I'm learning here. This is an interesting video now. Here we go, power in. Yes, now it's still working. I don't know why it didn't work before, because it doesn't have an off and on switch on this thing. It's you power it up and away it goes, because you can control the record and stop functions from the RC gear. So why did it not work before? This is crazy. It's still working now. Anyway, while we've got it apart, let's just unplug the power and, as I say, let's take a look inside, see how well it's built. Actually, this is going to be a real pain in the backside to get apart because, as you can see, these connectors on the side here, they actually go into slots in the plastic, so they're actually poking slightly flush or slightly through the plastic. And on both sides we have these. On this side we've got our mini USB, SD card, micro SD card, and our mini HDMI. And on this side we have the connector for the LCD screen. So obviously that's trapping the sides of the board in the plastic here. And I really don't want to go prying too hard because it's not obviously coming out easily, and I don't want to break it because it's working now and I'd like to test it. So I won't tear it down any more than this, but suffice to say, I can see good and bad on this board here. The SMD soldering over here, the reflow soldering is quite nice. There's some manual soldering here, which is a bit how you're going. They've chopped a lot off there with the side cutters. But yeah, I mean, you know, the quality is reasonably good. I wouldn't complain too much about that. We've got a shielded can here, which covers over a whole lot of sensitive stuff, again, to reduce the radiation and perhaps even to reduce pickup of stray noise from other things. So this is quite a well put together camera in terms of the recording unit. So let's put it back together and I'll put it back on the bench, see if we can get it working, and I'll see where that noise was up there in the, looked like about 1.75 gigahertz. Let's try it out, see what happens. While I've got this on the bench, here's something rather cool I just noticed. See, this connector here has pins on it, and it doesn't seem to be a polarized connector. That's to say, you can actually put it in either way up. You can put it in this way up, or you can turn it over, you want to see it that way, or turn it over and put it in that way up, because the pins are mirrored on both sides. So the pins are on both sides, doesn't matter which way up you put the cable. It's kind of a cool little detail, because there's nothing worse than farting around in the bowels or something, trying to make sure you've got your connector lined up. We all know how that works if you're using micro SD, not micro SD, if you're using micro USB connectors. It can be a real pain to get them up the right way if you can't see the hole. But this way, it doesn't matter. Nice touch. And another thing I noticed with this camera is, if you turn it over, it seems to have the standard tripod mounting recess in there for a screw. So again, if you mounted it on a tripod, it would be looking straight up in the air. But if you have an angle bracket like this, then it is possible to put a screw in the back instead of using these things on the side. But really, look, obviously it's made for a bracket. Why don't they just include the bracket? I made this complaint about the last 2 versions of this damn thing. Nobody's listening. We need a bracket for this. It shouldn't be an optional extra. It shouldn't be something you have to make yourself. It should be something that comes in the box. Okay, now it's all back together. Let us push the power connector in and see if it works after the reassembly. It does. Okay, one thing I have noticed, which might have some bearing on this, is if we look very carefully at this pin here, you can see the actual conductor is outside the plastic. I'm wondering if maybe this hasn't been properly assembled, and what's happened is that we end up with this particular wire not being fully seated in the plastic connector. I can't, yeah, it's looking a bit, yeah, it is. That seems to be what's happening here. Okay, so here we go again, turn it on, hopefully it'll work this time. I've tried to repair the cable fairly well. Here we go, bingo. Now, there was a spike that popped up, but I don't see it there anymore. Or is it just coming up now? Just move this around. There we go, there's the spike. I didn't have it quite in the same place. What I'm going to do now is move my little marker, if I can find my marker button, which is here. And I won't be teaching you how to drive a spectrum analyzer, but I'm going to move my marker over and just see what that frequency is. There it is, just about there. Now that frequency is, where are we? 1.346 gigahertz, so 1.346 gigahertz. There is quite a little spike there. It's about 10 decibels up from the baseline noise. I'm going to unplug the camera, and it's gone. So there you go. So there is a spike there at 1.34 gigahertz. Now if you're running anything that uses that frequency, of course you could be in trouble if it's receiving on the model. Now you might think, oh, 1.3 gigahertz, that's video, but just a reminder that something that makes a noise on the model on the same frequency as your video system is probably not going to cause a problem, because the video transmitter you've got is way more powerful, and it's your video receiver that would be picking that up, and that's going to be a long way away on the ground. So it's not really an issue. You only need to worry about frequencies that are being received at the model end, which is typically your 433 UHF, RCF using that, and your 2.4 gigs. So let's actually go along and have a look at 2.4 gigs. Maybe it's time to just check out and make sure that we aren't spewing anything out on 2.5 gigahertz, because that would be a tragedy. Wireless microphone sitting in there somewhere. Ooh. Let's go along to 2.4. 2.45, there we go. Let's see, so that's pretty quiet, not much happening there. Let's plug the gear in, see if it makes a noise on 2.4 gigahertz. No, nothing there. There's a little spike down here, but that's nothing to worry about because it's certainly not going to affect our RC signal. So it's safe to use this on 2.4, obviously. Okay, so you might be thinking, well, why would I use this system at all? What's the point? I mean, it's bulkier, it's heavier, it doesn't do 60p. So what's the point? Well, I'll show you. I'll show you one of the cool things about this, which I think is going to have applications, and in some applications you'll want to use this. And that is, it has that LCD screen. And I'll just hold this up. Let's get our camera pointed around. I've got the little thing on the camera, so I won't see much of a picture. But on the LCD screen there, we can do our setup. We've got menu option. I think this is probably the menu button, or it might be mode. There you go. So there's the menu. We can, it's a bit hard to get the glare off, but we can do a lot of the camera setup without having to use a phone via Wi-Fi or having to use a laptop computer and a USB connection. So it becomes very self-contained. If you're going out in the field, for example, if you're might be doing commercial FPV use, doing some filming of areas or something, you can set this thing up to exactly what you want, just using the screen that's on board. Then, as I mentioned before, you can frame your image using this as the viewfinder. So that's one thing your Mobius won't do, your RunCam won't do, and, well, it's still going, don't worry. The screen just timed out, I think. What have I got here? No, screen stopped. Why is the screen stopped? Oh no, don't tell me, don't tell me. Oh, here we go. It's got a button on the side. Yeah, so it's one of the things that Mobius, RunCam, and the Legend 1 don't do. They don't give you this nice, convenient little screen. Of course, other cameras like the GoPro format, the SJ4000 or whatever it is, the Turnigy action camera, they have a screen on the back, which is great. But the beauty of this one is you're not carrying it along when you don't need it. So when you don't want to risk this getting broken. Once you've set it up, you unplug it and you're away. But of course this still weighs more, this whole setup weighs more than a GoPro or a Turnigy action cam. So there we go, that's basically on the bench. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to set these up, all the cameras I mentioned, so that was all the ones I showed you yesterday, plus this one. We'll set them all up, do some comparative side by side, and we're going to look at that ability to control the camera from the RC set. And I'll set up a channel on my radio so I can turn the camera off and on, although honestly, really, I do have to wonder about whether that's such a big feature. Why? Well, because SD cards are cheap. You can put a 32 gig SD card in here, it'll take 4 or 5 hours of video probably. So I tend to find that when I want to get some good video, I just start the camera up, fly around, land, turn the camera off, and then I can use my editing suite to go in and pull out the frames or the bits of the video I want and just discard the rest. You'd be gutted if you took off with the camera just turned off with a view to turning it on later and something happened that you missed because your camera wasn't running. Yeah, I guess horses for courses. One area where it may be of some value, and I'll be testing this out, is when you want to take still photos, because this claims to be a 14 megapixel camera. Is it? I don't know. We'll have a look. I'll get still photos from the Legend 1 and this and the other cameras, and we'll look and see whether they really are as many megapixels as they claim, or whether they're just upscaled, because a lot of the time they tend to upscale these things. You know, they'll just use the basic sensor and then they'll just add pixels by scaling the whole thing up, which means you don't get an increase in resolution at all. It's just a bit of a gimmick. We'll find out if that's the case, or whether we do get superior still images. So there you go. That's a little bit of an intro to the Foxtech Horizon HD version 4, and it'll go on the frame with all the other stuff we'll be testing. Oh, I don't know, I might need 2 trucks to get this out to the flying area. But thank you for watching this video. If you've got questions, if you've got comments, if you've got things you want to see, please ask. Put them in the place provided by YouTube for that purpose, and I will do my best to address them. In the meantime, I don't think I've got another camera review I need to do just yet, so I'll clear the bench and do something else. Bye for now.